Could easily trip over this. Oh, I hit it just even passing it and I can see it. All of a sudden you're gonna run into this fence and that sure isn't gonna be pleasant.
My name's Angela and I'm a visually impaired designer. If you like this video, please subscribe below. Accessible sidewalks.
Hey everyone, hope you're all doing okay and that you're able to find some peace and normality in this time with COVID-19. I know that it's been stressful for me and I always feel kind of on edge, but I'm trying to find ways to normalize this new staying at home and not being able to go out when I want to. One of the main things that I've been doing, even though I'm supposed to stay home, I utilize my backyard and my front porch in areas where I'm still isolated, but I'm outside getting fresh air. I also try to go on at least one walk a day and get out in my neighborhood. As I've been going on walks lately, I've noticed that my city has been working on making our sidewalks more accessible to people with disabilities. But not all of the sidewalks are accessible, and it can be very challenging for people to even just go on a stroll, or even worse when they're trying to get from point A to point B and it's their only way of getting around. This is what I want to talk to you about today. I've noticed no matter where I have lived, there's always been problems with the sidewalks. It doesn't matter how old the city is or how new it is. And in a lot of places that I've traveled to, I've also noticed that there are issues with sidewalks everywhere. All right, let's talk about sidewalks for a minute. So what might seem like the most obvious group of people who are affected by poorly designed or not kept up to ADA guideline sidewalks would be someone in a wheelchair. And this is a very, very big problem. If there are sidewalks that don't have curb cuts at all, this really makes it impossible for someone in a wheelchair to go up or down the street. And that is just not fair that they aren't able to get around. Sometimes the only option in a wheelchair is to travel on the street instead of the sidewalk, because then you don't have to worry about going up and down, especially when there aren't places that you can go up or down on the sidewalk. And this definitely isn't a safe way to travel around when you have to be in the street instead of on the sidewalk. Clearly we have sidewalks so that we aren't on the same pavement as cars are. People in wheelchairs aren't the only people being affected by poor sidewalks. There are also parents with strollers who are trying to get around. If someone has a shopping cart or any other type of cart or something with wheels that they're trying to push around. If someone is carrying something heavy and they can't see what's in front of them, or they're holding a child in their arm and they trip over a little ledge because it's higher than it should be, it's not level, that can be troubling. And there are also people with walkers and canes and people who don't have full movement in their legs, and they might not be able to lift their leg up to go up and down the curbs. And there's so many other people who suffer from poor sidewalks. Now, I know that a lot of these examples I'm sharing are permanent situations that the government and local leaders should be really dealing with, but there are also situations that the individual can help improve the sidewalks. For example, having obstacles on the sidewalk, such as a bike or toys, garbage cans, having bushes that you haven't trimmed, or flowers, or any type of obstacle that extrudes into the sidewalk. Not shoveling or raking leaves that are on a sidewalk, or removing any type of debris that would go on your sidewalk. A fence gate being left open, anything like that will prevent the sidewalk from being accessed like normal. A big issue while I was living in Seattle was people who would leave rideshare bikes in the middle of the sidewalk instead of putting it to the side. This makes it inaccessible to people who are in wheelchairs and people who have visual impairments. It's also important if you're going to use any type of signage, say you're having a yard sale and you put up a sign on your sidewalk, or if you're a business and you have signs on the sidewalk inviting people to come in, or patio furniture or anything like that, that you make sure it's out of the way so that people can use the sidewalk as they're supposed to. As someone who's visually impaired, I know that people with visual impairments struggle with sidewalks that are poor. Whether that is the lack of tundral domes that are on the corner of the streets to help a visually impaired person know that they've reached a corner and the street will begin if they continue to walk, or if there's large cracks or broken cement in the middle of the sidewalk, this could make them trip or even fall over their cane and make it difficult for them to get around. I'm going to take you out on the streets and show you a couple of examples. So let's go. So this segment of the sidewalk is right by an assisted living center. It looks like they're going to fix it, so that's great. But it definitely is not ideal for a wheelchair or people with mobility disabilities. Someone using a cane. Look at these huge crevices. Sidewalks that are uneven from every segment or block can be troublesome. These all have a pretty significant ledge on them. Could easily trip over this. But if you're walking down this sidewalk and all of a sudden there's this construction zone and you can't see where you're walking, all of a sudden you're going to run into this fence, and that sure isn't going to be pleasant. And they do have a sidewalk that continues, but someone who's blind, they wouldn't realize that. So construction zones can be really a big problem. And now these poles that were consistently on the edge of this sidewalk are now in the middle of the sidewalk, which could be frustrating. And then any type of sidewalks that have uneven surfaces, like these stone walks or brick walks, can be really challenging with a wheelchair to get around. On this corner, there's a tree and no sidewalk, but the tree is directly in front of where the sidewalk would normally be. If you couldn't see, there's a good chance that you would run into this tree or the branches if you were a little taller than me. This is a common problem in my neighborhood, having lots of dips like this. But also, if you notice, there's no sidewalk. And it's very common to not have sidewalks here, which is really frustrating because if I want to go where there's safe for me to walk, I have to go in the street and I have to go all the way over here, which is where cars should be going. Another sidewalk that ends and you can see cars in the way just up a little bit. This side of the sidewalk has trundle domes and a curb cut. But if I wasn't able to see where I was going, I was like, oh great, I'm in the street now, let's cross the street. Guess what's gonna happen? I'm gonna run into this bush, this pole, or even this car. This example from earlier shows that this side of the sidewalk has trundle domes, which are the little dots here for visually impaired people to use to know they're going in a street. And if I continue across the street, you can see that there isn't even a curb cut here. There's no trundle domes, nothing. This sidewalk, instead of having a ledge that goes down, this one has one that goes up, which is odd and confusing. This ledge that's right here would be difficult and not detectable by a cane, and so they might run into that because they wouldn't be able to fill it with their cane. And what I mean by that is there's a ledge that sticks out significantly from where the base is, and so they wouldn't be able to fill it with their cane because typically you fill things on the ground and you can't fill things that are higher up. And then if we continue, there's a pole, there's this fence for construction that has this gadget that kind of sticks out a lot, and that could be easily tripped on. This corner is kind of hysterical in a way. It has an attempt at a ramp, and then to get up though, there's no way that someone in a wheelchair can get up that. I'm struggling just walking. It's kind of crazy. There's this little ditch area that someone could easily get confused and fall in with that sharp metal down there. And then right here on this sidewalk, there's no tendril domes that signify to a blind person they're walking in the street, and that definitely could get really confusing. And then as we continue to walk across the street, like in a lot of areas here, there aren't any sidewalks. And see this stop sign? If you are blind, you could easily run into this stop sign because it's so thin you just wouldn't even notice. So I will say that in my own neighborhood, I've seen at least 2 homes that have ramps adapted on their stairs, so there definitely is a need for people to be able to get around the sidewalks. And there are definitely people in wheelchairs. I also live really close to an assisted living home, which is also full of people who probably want to go on walks occasionally, and if the sidewalks are poor for them, that can make it difficult for them to get around and enjoy the outdoors a little bit. This is an example of some shrubbery that would get in the way of someone in a wheelchair or someone trying to use a cane. More bushes on the sidewalk. Look at that, you can't even see the sidewalk. This big huge bush is in the sidewalk. Wheelchair wouldn't get around that. Branches in the middle of the sidewalk. This is an example of someone who left a bunch of big branches where the sidewalk should be. Meaning there is no sidewalk, but they decided to use it as their personal little area to stick their dead branches. On this sidewalk, someone's made the decision to park their truck and trailer on the sidewalk. Not such a great idea. Right here you can see that someone left their bike in the middle of the sidewalk. Oh, I hit it just even passing it and I can see it. On my kind of but not actually a sidewalk, there's a big mound of dirt in the way. And then for an individual person, they've chosen not to clean up the kind of shrubbery from their pine tree, and so walking on this is difficult. There's a lot of areas like this where there's rock that is supposed to be in the street, but it's just not maintained. So if you have stuff like that, it would be really helpful to sweep it into the street. Or see this ledge, no wheelchair would be able to get over this ledge. And that would be really confusing to someone with a cane. I noticed that on this corner, for some reason, there's a board here. Like they're trying to make it so someone could go over it. Maybe it's covering something, but this is definitely not going to help someone and would be very confusing and hazardous. That is the conclusion of my walk, but I wanted to reiterate that there are a lot of places in the sidewalk where the local leaders could be working on, and it seems like in my neighborhood they are a little bit, which is great, but there are also a significant amount of places where individual homes could be better making sure that their sidewalks are accessible. I hope you found this video helpful and that you will look at sidewalks differently now and try to do your part.
If you like this video, please subscribe below. Bloopers.
Working on making improvements. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. And my body gets